Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Trek Canon Midnight Edition. So, today, what I wanted to do was do an examination of arguably one of the best Star Trek The Next Generation episodes, The Inner Light. And I'm going to do an examination of this episode through the lens of commitment and love. Now, just so you guys know, I was having a conversation. You know how it always starts this way. I was having a conversation with someone about the importance of love. Okay. From this person's standpoint, they feel that love isn't enough. All right. So that's not something that I was taught in, literature or in movies or, things like that. All the romance novels, all of the, romance movies and love stories and, everything like that has always held to the premise that love is enough. Love can solve all problems. All right. So, what I wanted to do is examine, compare and contrast, I should say, commitment and love. All right. All to one of the greatest songs ever made. Now, the episode The Inner Light is is episode 25, I think, of season 5. All right. Now, The Inner Light basically, and for spoil, and it may be some spoilers, it's gonna be some spoilers in here. So y'all know how I roll. If y'all haven't seen The Inner Light, and I have no idea why you wouldn't have seen The Inner Light, but if you haven't seen it, by all means, pause this video, come back, pick back up, and let's see if we can talk about it. Now, um, just so you guys have know people who are just joining us for our examinations and midnight editions. Our midnight editions are focused more on adult themes and adult aspects, or more mature aspects of Star Trek and the Star Trek mythos and stories presented and ideas presented in Star Trek. So a lot of these examinations that I do aren't necessarily the topic of the episode, but I think its importance of the importance of the things that I'm examining in contrast to that episode, I think can hold just as much importance or weight uh, as the main topic of the episode. So again, we're going to be talking about the episode The Inner Light, and it's season 5, episode 25 of the Next Generation. All right. I wanted to begin this by letting you guys know what the definition of commitment is. All right. Commitment is the state or quality of being dedicated to a cause, an activity, etc. A person, place, thing, whatever noun you want to throw in there. All right. That's commitment. Okay. Or you could think of it as an engagement or obligation that restricts freedom of action. So they give words that are synonymous with commitment as being responsible or obligation. All right. So I want you guys to keep that in mind when I mention commitment in this particular examination. Now, we all know what love is. All right. At its most prettiest and fabled uh, state, love is the thing that makes the world go round. All right. If you want to use those particular pieces of propaganda, love is what makes the world go round. But at its base, it is just a chemical reaction in the brain. Okay. So let's jump right into it. So this episode starts with Captain Picard and the crew, on their way through space, and they basically pick up a signal from this probe. All right. When they go to scan this probe emits a signal that causes Captain Picard to become unconscious. When he wakes up, he finds himself on the planet Catan. It's a non-Federation planet. They've never heard of this planet before. It's not on any Starfleet charts or anything like that. He's in the district of Resica. So he's in the Resican district. And come to find out that, long story short, Captain Picard is occupying the body of a Resican named what was his name? Kamen. All right. Now, Kamen is married to Elaine. All right. And when she finds him, or when he sees her, he's basically like, hey, is this a holodeck program? Am I being kidnapped? He's very paranoid, as anybody would be, just being thrust into a situation that is alien to you. This is not where you were. None of these surroundings seem familiar. You don't seem familiar. What game is being played here? All right. Now, I want to link the growth of Captain Picard through this story with the growth of the greatest song ever written for Star Trek. All right. And I want you guys to think of it like this. Like I just said, Captain Picard awakes on a planet in a situation that he has no idea what to do. He has no idea how to react. The only way he can react is with uh we'll say, not anger, but with apprehension, with paranoia, all right, with a high level of curiosity, trying to figure out what's going on and how I can link this to what I remember as far as being on the bridge of the Enterprise. Now, we find out through dialogue with Eileen that Kamen has been sick, and he's been having a few bouts of memory loss or of amnesia. All right. Of course, Captain Picard doesn't believe this. He bounces. He's out the house. All right. Now, when he comes back to the place, the only place that he knows, when he comes back and to the only person that he's met since he's waking up in this particular surrounding, she feeds him and everything like that. She's really patient. She's understanding. All right. And as he looks around, he finds what appears to be a flute. All right. It's a Rasican flute. Now, he questions her about it, and she tells him that um, that's his instrument. That's something that he plays. He proceeds to try to play it, and it's terrible. Just like with any new person picking up an instrument, and she proceeds to tell him that she didn't say that he was any good at it. So he puts it down. Now, I want you guys to start the link between the greatest story ever told, all right, and the growth of Picard right here. Like I said, Captain Picard is in a situation that he doesn't understand, just like this flute. Captain Picard wasn't into music and musical instruments like that, okay? And if he were, it wouldn't have been a flute or something that looks like a flute, all right? Not that we have anything different about the flute. It's just not a character trait that we've seen in Picard and canon. Now, like his immaturity in this situation, his immaturity to this flute happens at about the same time. He don't know the notes, none of that. All right, he don't know what song to play, none of that. So as time goes on, we see Captain Picard is still trying to hold on to his life and figure out where he is in the galaxy, what's going on. And through it all, Eileen is patient and she's understanding. Now, I want you guys to think of something. Can you imagine your significant other waking up on the couch or waking up next to you, or any of those situations like that, and they legitimately tell you that they have no idea who you are, where they are, and don't believe anything that you are saying, okay? They're adamant that they have a whole nother life, that this is not their existence, this is not where they're supposed to be, okay? That this whole thing is a mistake, this is a joke on their life, okay? She had to wake up and exist with this person for years, okay? Now, they don't show the amount of years between that time as far as, okay, well, it's been this amount of time later or anything like that. But what they do show is the physical changes as far as age goes that Picard and Eileen are going through. Now, when we get to the middle, once Captain Picard decides, hey, listen, I've been running around trying to figure out where I am. I've been, treating you like shit, basically. Look, and you've did nothing but be patient. You've did nothing but be understanding. And the only way me being the man that I am know how to repay you is by showing that same thing to you. Okay? So he decides to fall into his role as husband, fall into his role as citizen, all right? Fall into his role as council member, scientist, all right? And fall into his role as musician, all right? Because by this time, you can see that his skill with the Resican flute has improved greatly, all right? He still makes mistakes. He still hasn't got the song down the way he wanted, all right? But you can tell that there is a form coming out of it. You can move to the rhythm. You can enjoy or appreciate what he's doing, the art or the choices or the sacrifices that he made prior to this to get to this point. Now, so far, we have the growth of confusion, all right, and confusion with this new life and confusion with this instrument, all right. As we progress, we start to see that he's taken to this life. He's starting to understand this life. He's starting to appreciate his significant other and the things that she's bringing to the table. And you can see that same maturity showing in his music. All right. Now, eventually, it's been around 50 years. Picard's a grandparent, and everything like that. Um, they've lived a long time together, Elaine and Picard. Kids, stuff like that, grandkids. And his proficiency as a husband, as a citizen, as a granddad, his role, all of these things are now second nature to him. All right. He's an expert at it. He's an expert at expressing his emotions. Picard really wasn't good at expressing his emotions or his intimate side. He always kept that really separate from the crew. All right. And when he first got to Catan, he kept that really separate from them for obvious reasons. But when he gets old, you can see that he has let go of those walls and those barriers and things like that. He has let go of the life that he used to live. It's not even a thought of his anymore. Now, some people will look at the episode and say, well, Trek Cannon, he was still looking through telescopes and doing all of that. But there's a difference in the reasons of why. When he first got there, he was looking through the telescopes to figure out his location. How can he get back? How can he send a signal to Starfleet? How can he get away? How can he get out of this situation he didn't want to be in? All right. And by the end, he's looking through the telescope to help the civilization, to help the planet, to help Resica, to help the planet Catan. He's trying to save his family. He's trying to understand the drought and why things are happening on the planet the way that they are, because he has invested into this culture, into this family, into this world. Okay. So there was a very big difference in his reasoning when he got there for looking through the telescope and later looking through the telescope and teaching his daughter the science and everything like that. Now, we go back to, Picard ends up realizing that this life of his is actually what he thought of it as originally, a program to help raise awareness for the Catan people. Now, at the end of the episode, Riker brings Picard the flute. The probe has shut down and there was no more activity from it, but they stored this Resican flute there and they brought it to Picard. And Picard played the song that at the beginning um, wasn't a song. It wasn't formed. It had no form to it. And you can tell the emotion and the loss that he had put into that song at that moment, as opposed to when he was playing it, say, in the middle of the episode, when he was fooling around with it at the middle of the episode. Although there were some mistakes, it didn't have as much sorrow as it did towards the end. Now, let me jump a little bit ahead of myself and go off on a slight tangent. But if you guys remember the episode Lessons, which was season 6, episode 19 or 20. I want to say 19. It was like episode 19 from episode 6. It was the episode Lessons, which I kind of consider a spiritual successor to the episode The Inner Light. Why do I say this? At the end of The Inner Light, his song still wasn't complete. I would go so far as to say that, well, it reflected his state at that moment. What do I mean by that? When he started off, not to keep beating a dead horse, but when he started off on, not knowing what his role was as a husband, as a spouse, all right, not knowing what that role was, doing almost everything against her wishes and her expectations of what role, how he was supposed to have played that role. His music reflected that immaturity level, that lack of knowledge, I should say, about not only music but his role. As he started to develop in his role and started to understand his role and become more comfortable with his role and it started to show in his music. All right, he started to get better. Just like with anything, practice. We don't fall into being spouses instantly, especially if some of us don't have that particular background as far as examples to pull from. But this is what brings us to, oh, wait, I was getting ahead of myself. So, the episode Lessons. If you remember in that episode, I forget what her name was. I forget what her name was. But he ends up falling in love with this doctor. And she finds this really the most acoustic part of the ship in his Jeffries tube, where she unrolls this piano and Picard takes out his Ruskin flute. And for the first time, you get to hear that song the way it should have been, as a pairing, as a couple, as a duet. Okay? Not knowing his role, not knowing how to play, falling into his role but still making mistakes, accepting his role but still wishing for a life. We ain't gonna say wishing for a life, still remembering a life that he once had that was different than this. But he's still trying. And his music reflects this. At the end, when he loses Eileen, okay, his partner, his soulmate, if you will, all right, when Kamen loses her, it reflects in his music, all right, and when he finds, I guess, the opposite piece of that missing emotion within this doctor, all right, they can bring their music together, all right, or she can supplement his song with something more joyous, okay, which is what the song ended up being. Instead of being so sorrowful, it became inspirational. It brought tears to your eyes for something other than loss, all right. Now, for those of you who wanted to know, the Inner Light is actually an excerpt from a Scottish a song called Scottish Fantasy or something like that, which I had the chance to always play in its entirety. So I recommend you guys check it out. But let's get into the what was it? The commitment and love aspect of this. In the conversation, we were debating which one is more important, love or commitment. Now, if we've already held true to the notion that love isn't enough, then logically there must mean that there is something that needs to reinforce love. All right. So what is it? Now, if one person commits themselves, Elaine committed herself to her husband. She committed herself to Kamen. All right. She didn't have to do that. I don't know how the laws as far as marriage goes on the planet Catan, but I'm a relate it to how marriage goes and relationships goes here on Earth, terra firma. But she didn't have to do that. All right. She could have looked at all of the cold shoulders and impatience and temperament and paranoia and all this type of stuff, and she could have said, hey, you know what, the easiest thing for me to do would be to just bounce, would be to just leave. I can be happier somewhere else. All right. And the thing is that if you have committed to someone and you have committed to that family, all right, then how is that being dedicated to a cause, activity, or etc., or anything like that if you decide to leave for your selfish reasons, which she didn't do, which is one of the things that I so admired about Elaine. And these are, and side note again, this is one of the reasons, say for instance, why I, as a younger person, had the idea that love conquers all. All right. So she had to stick with this dude day in, day out, through his absences, all of this. I'm pretty sure she had friends telling her, hey man, I seen Cayman, man, he was doing this, man. Him and Balai was out there doing this, man, and la la la, and he was trying to get away, like he ain't never home and la 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 la. Think of the type of fortitude that Elaine must have had for her to disregard all of that and still stay with Cayman. All right. Still try to work with him. Still try to understand him. Still try to help and assist him. That is love. All right. And commitment. So, what do you think Elaine started off with? Because to her, Cayman just woke up different. All right. And if love is actually a chemical reaction in the brain, then there are actions that can happen that can change those chemical reactions to things like hate, disgust, dislike, all that kind of things. But that is transitional. What keeps everything going? And this is what I realized. It is the commitment. All right. Sometimes I may not like you. Sometimes I may love you. You know what I mean? But through it all, I am committed to its success, the success of this thing. All right. Now, this is interesting. An engagement or obligation that restricts freedom of action. It restricts freedom of action. So if I'm committed to someone or to something, my freedoms are restricted. What I want is restricted. There are so many things I have to consider. Is it good for the kids? Is it good for the grandkids? Is it good for this person who I've said I will spend the rest of my life with? You know what I mean? So when people say to you, love isn't enough, agree with them. Love is not enough. Commitment reinforces that. And hopefully, if you guys get it just right, get the synergy just right, maybe you guys will have your own world's greatest song. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't. Sorry if the video went a little too long. And as always, peace, recycle, and say the whales. Federation, man. Federation. You guys be cool.